This is Not a Werewolf Story by Sandra Evans, Chapter 28, where Tuffman's nefarious deeds are revealed. A few evenings later, there's a knock at the door. Dad gets up to answer it. He must be tired because he forgets to send us outside. "Hello, hello," a cheery voice says. I sniff. My tongue rolls out of my mouth. I'm so happy. Dean Swift. He comes in and sets his shoebox down on the table. "It's been a few weeks since—" Dean Swift stops like he doesn't want to say the rest. My dad finishes for him. "Since the search for Raoul was called off." "This has been a hard couple of months for all of us, and you especially," says Dean Swift. "But I have discovered something that might answer at least one question." I stretch and crawl out from under the table. I come at Dean Swift very low, on my belly almost, with my tail droopy and my ears back. Dad is looking at me, waving his hand to tell me to get back under the table. But I know better than he does. If anyone can help, it's Dean Swift. "Is that one of the wolves?" asks the dean. He doesn't sound as surprised as you'd expect. "Yeah," Dad nods. He scratches his head. "The white one's over there in front of the TV. She really likes prime-time dramas. This one stays close to the food. The darndest thing, he loves cereal." Dean Swift looks down at me. I scoot up closer and try to put words into my eyes so that he can see the raw me inside them. Instead, what I see stuns me. Above Dean Swift's head, I see the shadow of an eagle's head, and behind him, I see wings. Well, not really wings, more like a hologram of wings, like I could push my hand through them, like the ghost of a skin. In his eyes, there's a flash that tells me that above my head, he sees the shadow of my Raoul skin. He smiles and touches me above the eyes. "We know each other in the woods." That's what he said to Miss Turn. This is what he meant. This is the shadow my mother saw when she hunted with Tuffman. This is why she wouldn't eat his kills. This is how she figured out his evil secret. Dean Swift takes a big breath. He smiles at me and then pushes the shoebox he brought toward my dad. "I found this among the belongings of our former PE teacher. He left us suddenly." The dean glances down at me. "In fact, he disappeared the night the cougar got shot." There's a long silence, and then he says, "Jimmy, there is no question that I made a serious mistake. Not once have you blamed me, and yet you should. I should have kept track of where Raoul went on the weekends. I thought he was with you. You thought he was with me. I've been trying to figure out how I could have been so negligent." My dad looks sad, like he does whenever anyone talks about me. "Well, here's part of the answer." The dean opens the box. It was Mr. Tuffman. He pulls out a couple of yellow notepads. "Do you see the traces here?" He points to the top sheet on one of the pads. "He pressed down so hard with his pen when he wrote that it left the imprint of the word on the next page. I took a pencil and gently shaded over the blank page." He reads aloud. "Dear Dad, we have been very busy. I go fishing with Sparrow and the cubs. I have a lot of friends. I don't want to see you yet. You remind me too much of Mother. Please send more money because my shoes are too small. All my love, your son, Raoul." My dad swallows and his lower lip moves a little. "Don't cry, Dad. Please don't cry." "How much money did you send him?" Dean Swift asks. My dad puts his head in his hands and shakes it. "I don't know, a couple hundred, 1,000. It doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. If we could only figure out where Raoul went during all those weekends, we might have a chance of finding him." Dean Swift pauses and then looks at me. "Of bringing him back," he corrects himself. "In the meantime, it's now clear that Tuffman took advantage of Raoul's loneliness and your desire to do whatever Raoul needed to cope with the loss of his mother. We'll notify the police, but I wanted to know how many letters he sent and if you kept them." My dad nods. He gets up and walks with hunched up old man shoulders to the bedroom. Dean Swift bends down and whispers, "I suspected you were one of my kind, but I thought it would be many years before your second self would call you. We can recognize each other now only because we are both wearing our second skins. It's the way of the woods. It prevents us from hunting one another." I nod. He smiles. Then he stares at me, a long thinking line between his eyebrows. Are you hiding from someone in your wolf skin? He asks. I shake my head. Are you trapped? I nod. Have you lost your threshold? I tilt my head at him. The place where you shift? No. Have you lost your light? No. Have you lost your clothes? Yes. Was it Tuffman? Yes. Dean Swift runs his hands over his face. I'm a fool. Miss Turn warned me about him, but I refuse to see the truth. He jumps as a crash comes from the back of the trailer. I'm all right, my dad calls out. It's a mess in here, that's all. Dean Swift exhales and then leans back down to me. So few of our kind harm one another that it seemed impossible. I went down to the fort the night they captured the cougar. When I saw the shadow of Tuffman's face above the skin of that cougar, I began to wonder if he had something to do with your disappearance. I searched his room but found nothing. This morning, Marianne came to my office and told me about her visit here. She wanted to know about white wolves. It reminded me of Miss Turn's strange theory that Tuffman is a notorious hunter of spirit animals. I decided to search his room again. What I found has led me to believe that he was trying to separate you from your father and worm his way into your trust. But why? Was it simply to get to the white wolf through you? Yes. My dad comes back with a stack of papers. Dean Swift sits up straight and clears his throat. Here are all the letters, my dad says. He drops the stack on the table and slumps back in his chair. And you're telling me Raoul didn't write them? I put my paws up on the chair and rest my head in his lap. No, Dean Swift says. He didn't write even one of them. He must have wondered why I stopped coming, my dad says sadly. He must have thought I abandoned him too. Now he'll never know how much I love him, that I think of him every second. Dean Swift looks at me and talks to my dad. I imagine he knows the truth. Children always do. He stays until the sun starts to fall behind the cedars, cruising down toward the water, lighting it up so that the blue sea glows like my wolf mother's eyes. They don't talk much, my dad and the Dean, but Dean Swift's silence is a kind of hug, warm and filling the room with his understanding. When he leaves, he bends down and scratches my ears. I'll get you out, he whispers. I will make inquiries. Have no fear.